When you pledge, you are binding yourself to that person or that group. When a eunuch pledge his loyalty to the emperor, he is binding his soul to the emperor and his ideals. Same thing with these talented Negroes pledging their loyalty to whatever Black Greek letter organizations they are trying to pledge to. They are tying their souls to the organization and their ideals and even their rituals. And a lot of their rituals are Luciferian and sadistic. When it comes to pledging, the scriptures tells us in James chapter 5 verses 12, "But above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath, but let your yea be yea and your nay, nay, lest ye fall into condemnation." Therefore, as a believer of Christ and the Most High, we are not to pledge oaths to any other organization lest we fall into condemnation. So when the members of these Black Greek letter organizations finally pledge, which God do they pledge their oaths to? Okay, so the first victim I'm going to take on is my former gang, Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. The god of this fraternity is the Greek god Apollo. See, after we crossed the burning sands or passed through the fire straight into Kappa land, we actually were commanded to bow down to the Delphic shrine of Apollo. And you can find this also on the internet. But let me show you the coat of arms. As we look at this coat of arms, we can see certain symbols that prove my claims. Apollo was the divine son of Zeus, aka an Antichrist figure. He was the god of the sun and light, aka he was also known as the light bearer, which according to Isaiah chapter 40, Lucifer was translated into the light bearer. Apollo was also known as the god of music and poetry, healing and plagues, prophecy and knowledge, order and beauty, archery and agriculture. Now, to give you a little background on the story of Apollo and the Delphic shrine, Apollo, or Apollyon, was the son of Zeus and Leto, who was a Titan goddess. So for those who read the Bible, we see the evidence of Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 2, where it states that, "And it came to pass where the men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and their daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose." Apollo was a hybrid, and due to his birth, and Zeus always having a bunch of girls, his wife Hera sent a serpent dragon named Python to get after Leto. Leto was rejected by all the lands except on the island of Delos, where the twin gods Artemis and Apollo were born at. After Apollo grew, he sought for revenge and went to Parnassus, where Python resided, and wounded him with an arrow. Python managed to escape to the island of Delphi, which derives from the word Delphis, which is the ancient Greek word for wombed, and was also the ancient sacred location for the Titan goddess Gaia, or as we know her as Mother Earth. Apollo ended up finding Python guarding the ancient site of Gaia, and Apollo ended up slaying the serpent with his arrows. On a side note, whenever you research symbols of Apollo, you will see that the arrow is one of his symbols. If you look on the coat of arms of Kappa Alpha Psi, notice on the right section, painted in gold, there is a symbol of what? Of an arrow. Now, because the Olympian gods were much like a 50-season soap opera, Zeus punished Apollo and sent him to be a shepherd, hence where Apollo became also the god of the shepherd. After 8 years of punishment, Apollo sought on a journey to look for a place and a leader for his cult. And after spying on some people from Crete, he transformed into a shape of a dolphin all the way to the island of Delphi. Another side note, for those brothers that call themselves noobs, you should know the symbol of the dolphin. But the reason the old heads give you for the symbol of the dolphin in Kappa Alpha Psi is actually a lie. Because the reason there is a symbol of the dolphin is because it represents Apollo scouting for his sacred temple. Yeah, boy. Y'all gonna learn today. Y'all gonna learn today. But next, when you look at the symbol of the laurel wreath at the top of the coat of arms, this too is a symbol for Apollo. It is also a symbol for Bacchus or Dionysus, but I'll touch on that later when I cover one of the other organizations and also in the conclusion. But the story of the laurel wreath concerning Apollyon goes as such. Apollo's most famous lover was Daphne, a nymph, which are the female equivalents to satyrs, aka minor nature goddesses, and they were companions to Bacchus and even Artemis, Apollo's sister. Now, Apollo fell for the nymph Daphne, even though she made a vow to Artemis, Apollo's sister, to remain a virgin. However, Apollo stalked Daphne until one day Daphne couldn't take it no more, and she asked from her father, the river god Peneus, to be transformed into something else. And just as Apollo was about to try and rape her, Daphne was transformed into a laurel tree, in which Apollo swore to love her forever and wore a laurel wreath as a token of his unhappy love. So, again, we see more hidden things in plain sight, proof that the god of Kappa Alpha Psi is the Greek god of Apollo. Right on the coat of arms, you see the laurel wreath, which represents the nature spirit or the feminine spirit of the nymph Daphne, and the bow, which Apollo used to slay the serpent dragon Python. On a final note, if you ever read the history book of Kappa Alpha Psi, it will state at the very beginning that Elder Watson Diggs, who was one of the founders, got a lot of his inspirations from Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. So for those who are brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi who own the history book of Kappa Alpha Psi, or you're just curious to go on the internet and look this up, you'll see it right there in either the first page or the first two pages. I can't really remember because I actually burned my stuff. But let's go on to the next fraternity. The first of the Divine Nine organization is called Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and they will be our second victim. Now, this fraternity is pretty easy to prove that the God they worship is not the Most High of the Scriptures. One of the main symbols that the Alphas display is the image of the Sphinx of Giza. The Sphinx was a symbol of sun worship as the Egyptians worshipped the sun. This is a symbol of Egyptian god worship, and if one calls themselves a Christian, they must know that the scriptures tells us in Isaiah chapter 31 in the first chapter, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, and stay on horses and trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. One thing I notice about the Alphas is that when you listen to some of their hymns and poems, it always references Egypt as well as Ethiopia. Some of their presidents, the presidents of their chapters of the fraternity, even encourage their members to make pilgrimages to its spiritual birthplace of Egypt to walk across the sands of Giza's plateau to the Great Sphinx of Giza and the Great Pyramids of Giza and to Ethiopia, which should give you an idea on who they might venerate. Now, when it comes to their coat of arms, they actually have two coat of arms. One original one and one that they use today. In their original coat of arms, there are images of the Sphinx, the pyramids of Giza, a torch, a dove, and an axe with the bundles, or in short, the fasces. And at the top is the fleur de lis. The axe has many meanings to it. First, it is a symbol of masonry, representing both creation and destruction. The axe also symbolizes thunder, and power due to crafting an axe, the ancient would notice that it sparked. In ancient Chinese culture, you would see the axe on their robes to represent power and authority, aka the spreader of civilizations. So when it comes to philosophy of Alpha Phi Alpha, the symbol of the axe is used because they probably believe that Egypt and Ethiopia were the creators and spreader of civilization. Now the next symbol is the dove, which is a symbol for the mother goddess. In Babylon, the dove was associated with Semiramis, who is also known as Ishtar or Asherah in ancient Canaan. In Greece, they associated the dove with the fertility goddess Aphrodite. So here we have the alphas venerating also the mother goddess. Another symbol that is associated with the mother goddess is the fleur de lis. Lis is French, meaning lily. And if one is privy to history, we know that the lily was also used as a symbol of worship. The meaning behind the symbol meant purity, and in ancient times, you know that the mother goddess was also known as the divine virgin mother. In ancient Egypt, the blue water lily was associated with the god Nefertum, who rose from the blue water lily, according to the Book of the Dead. He also had a warlike aspect to him, and in that altar he was depicted with the head of a lion, which is very similar to the great Sphinx. The torch is a symbol for enlightenment or light. It also represents the knowledge of the mysteries or the doctrine and dogmas of the occult. The gods that held the torch or the light were known as the light bearer. For those who know, the term Lucifer is translated from the Latin word light bearer. Therefore, the torch is a symbol of Lucifer or Satan or Luciferian ideas, which you can find in all secret societies. You had gods like Mithras, who is known for holding the torch. But one thing to add upon this is when you start to see the twin torches or the double torches symbolism, then that usually signifies the underworld or chaos and death. The god that is most known for holding the double torches is the Greek goddess Hecate, who is the Greek version of the Roman goddess Diana for those who read the scriptures. Hecate was the goddess of the crossroads and the goddess of witchcraft. In certain images, you will see that she is holding the serpent. In the ancient mystery schools, the serpent are believed to be connected to magic. Hecate was also known as the triple goddess due to her many altars, and you will see depictions and images of her with three phases of herself. The three phases of Hecate was the maiden altar, the mother goddess altar, and the crone altar. And hold this thought and let us observe the second shield of Alpha Phi Alpha, because I'll get back to Hecate, right? In the second shield of Alpha Phi Alpha, there is the image of not only the double torch cross, which is the symbol of the goddess of the underworld, Hecate, but they also have an image of three heads, just like the triple goddess Hecate. Ain't this interesting? And if you're still not convinced that Alpha Phi Alpha worships a different god other than the God of the Bible, well, in a simple Google search, you can find this in the ritual book. In section 11, it states, the candidates shall kneel and eat the foods prepared by the gods for Alpha Phi Alpha men. Who are the gods of Alpha Phi Alpha? I can tell you for certain, it's not the God of the Bible. Concerning Phi Beta Sigma, there is a lot of similarities and clues to who they really worship. When we observe their coat of arms, we of course see the dove for the mother goddess, as well as the axe for masonry. Now, concerning the dove, this symbol is also associated with the Greek goddess Athena. The dove and the olive tree were associated with Athena because she was known as the protector. For those who read the scriptures, we know that this is a perversion of Noah coming off the ark. But nonetheless, Athena achieved this status by winning a contest Zeus held between her and Poseidon in the Roman myths. It's the same story as the dispute between Minerva and Neptune, with Athena being the Greek version of Minerva and Neptune the Greek version of Poseidon. Now, what does this have to do with Phi Beta Sigma? Well, check this out. If you do another simple Google search of their rituals, one of the rituals flat out says this, and I quote, "And is now under the protection of Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arts, and industry." The sons of Pallas Athena is Phi Beta Sigma. I found this research very, very interesting. When I talk to people or when you do research, a lot of people will say that the gods of Omega Psi Phi or the Q Dogs is the Egyptian goddess of the underworld, Anubis. Though I would like to agree due to the fact that they do call themselves dogs, howbeit, even when you look at their ritual books, there is no proof that that's true unless a member himself reveals the underground secrets that we won't know about unless, again, a member himself just flat out reveals the secrets. But when what we can see on their coat of arms is a laurel wreath and a lamp. We know that the laurel wreath is the symbol for the god Apollo or Apollyon and his love for Daphne, the nymph. So we know that this signifies the veneration of Apollo and the feminine nature. Next, we have the lamp, which represents the revelations of the mysteries or the enlightenment. I'll touch more on this when I get to the Iotas, but understand that many gods of antiquity were known as the Shiner or the Enlightener. Now, one thing to note in one of their rituals is that they state this, the Bacillus, "Whence come ye, my friends, clothed as ye be, and accompanied by these my true and tried brothers?" The neophyte commander responds, "From the outer chamber of darkness into the Shekinah of light of Omega." Now, for those who have heard the word Shekinah, guess what? Shekinah is the mother goddess, not another word for the Most High. Now, this may be controversial even for Christians, because I have heard in churches that pastors and preachers and even priests, because I was raised Catholic, even the priests will use the word Shekinah glory. You listen to some of these gospel albums and their choir's name is Shekinah Gospel Mass Choir, right? But here's the thing. Shekinah is never mentioned in the Old Testament. God is never mentioned by that name in the Old Testament or in the New. This has been a blasphemous name given to the Most High, as for the word Shekinah derives from the Chaldean meaning God the Mother, due to the fact that Shekinah represents the feminine attributes of the presence of God. Shekinah is a feminine word in Hebrew, based on the readings of the Talmud, not the Old Testament, but the Babylonian Talmud. Therefore, Shekinah is a concept from the Talmud which came from the Hebrews' captivity in Babylon. So the question I'll pose, who is Shekinah? The answer is Asherah. The Hebrews constantly worshiped Asherah whenever they fell back into idolatry. And lo and behold, Anubis is not the god of the Q-Dogs. Their god is the mother goddess, Asherah, or Semiramis, or Diana, as she is known in Greece. Now, on another note, if we want to involve possibly where the dogs come from, my assumption, which means I cannot prove it, But because they worship the mother goddess, as well as if you look in their rituals, they mention the gate of Omega, and Omega is a her according to their rituals. We can also say that they worship Hecate, the mother goddess of the crossroads and the underworld. There are many depictions of her accompanied with a dog at the gates of the underworld. One of Hecate's sacred symbol was dogs. And in her cult, guess what? Dogs were sacrificed. Now, Hecate does have an Egyptian equivalent, which was Nephthys, which is Nephthys, who was also the mother goddess of witchcraft, death, and burial rites, the darkness, and mourning. Now, Nephthys also had a child, and her child happened to be none other than Anubis, the dog-headed god of the underworld. So, it is possible that they may venerate Hecate or Nephthys. Nonetheless, we know for sure that they venerate the mother goddess or the feminine principle. The last of the fraternities of the Divine Nine organizations I will cover are Iota Phi Theta. They are the youngest of these Black Greek letter organizations. Nonetheless, who do they venerate? Let's look at their coat of arms. Here we see a candlelight, a cross, and a centaur. First, the issue with the cross. For whatever reason, many will find this controversial, as I will say that this cross on the shield of Iota Phi Theta, it actually does not represent the cross that Christ bared. Now, I do want to take some time to divulge in some folks saying that Christ did not die on the cross and would even claim that there's no evidence at all in the Bible. Here's your evidence that Christ did die on the cross. Matthew chapter 10, verse 38, it states, "And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me." In Matthew chapter 27, verse 42, "And the people mocked Christ, saying, He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the King of Israel, let him come down from the cross, and he will believe him." And even in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, your third witness, "Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God." So we see that there are a plethora of mentions of the cross, and the term that cross was translated from was the Greek word stauros, which means a cross, which was a well-known instrument that the Greeks, the Romans, and even the Phoenicians used for persecutions. So Christ, he did die on the cross. But going back to the main topic, the cross on this fraternity shield is not for Christ. This is actually the T or the Taw, which symbolizes life and resurrection, but again, not for Christ. The cross on this shield is actually the initial T for the Babylonian divine son, Tammuz. This is the same Tammuz that is mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 8. And speaking of Ezekiel chapter 8, when the Most High was showing Ezekiel the abominations Israel was doing in secret, Ezekiel states in verse 14, "Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was towards the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz." This is in reference to the tradition that the Babylonians practiced by mourning for Tammuz, who was killed. It is the same custom practiced by the Catholic Church during the season they call Lent. And just like what the Catholics do on the so-called Ash Wednesdays, the initiates of Tammuz will mark the T or the cross for Tammuz on their forehead. Now, because Tammuz was also the reincarnation of the sun, you can find the image of the cross with a circle on top of the cross, with the circle being the symbol for the sun. Now, of course, this is the same symbol you see in ancient Egypt with the Ankh. But going back to the cross, this symbol of the cross was worshipped amongst the pagans from the Celts, the Aztecs. Surprisingly, the Greek god who held the cross as their sacred symbol was Dionysus, who in ancient Egypt was Osiris, and in Rome was known as the Bacchus. I want to talk more about the Bacchus, but I'll touch up on him when I get to some of the sororities. But here's an image of Bacchus in a robe holding his sacred tree with a headband with crosses, or the taw. Now, the wax lit candle may seem harmless as well, but there is a esoteric meaning behind this as well. The wax candle along with the lamp both represents the giver of light or revelation of the mysteries. In secret rites, whether it is fraternities or Masonic orders or the ancient mystery schools, they would light up the candle or lamp to their God and reveal information, words, or knowledge that are secret to their brotherhood or sisterhood, or whatever mystery school they belong to. Now, of course, God the Father is the giver of light, who is Jesus. God the Son, who is the way, the truth, and the light. But in the mystery schools, the Greek god Uranus was known as the shiner, or the giver of light. And in ancient Babylon, Uranus was another name given to Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, which brings us to our last symbol for the Iotas. The third image we see is the image of the hybrid creature called Centaurus. Centaurus actually goes all the way back to ancient Babylon, as they were known as the Centaurs, which is translated to priests of the suns. Another thing about the Centaurs were that they were known in the zodiac Sagittarius, which is also translated to the archer. With that symbol of the half man and half horse with the bow and arrow, it is also a symbol of the mighty hunter. Now, in the Bible, who was known as the mighty hunter before the Lord? Nimrod was considered that and was an enemy to the Most High. So we see that the Iotas venerate Nimrod, or how he was known as in Greece, Kronos or Saturn. Do not let that cross deceive you for a bit, for they worship Nimrod and his son Tammuz, not God the Father and Christ his Son. That'll be all for the fraternities. Next presentation, the next video will be about the sororities. So peace.